So the video I have here is facts and stories about the blue Fugates. I think I've heard this story before. I don't remember what the reason for it was, but it was a family and they were blue. And I don't know what that was about. I know I've heard this story before because I saw the name and I'm like, yeah, that looks about right. I feel like I've read something like that, but I don't feel like I've said it out loud because I didn't know how to pronounce it and still don't. So I'm going to go with whatever pronunciation the guy or lady. Apparently there's a lady who does the voiceovers too, which I encountered randomly a couple streams ago, I think. So whatever they go for, that's what I'm going to be going with. New race just dropped. Yeah, I guess. We'll see what ends up happening with this, because I don't know what that is. I'm pretty sure this takes place in America, though. The United States. The would-be United States. I'm not sure exactly when this is. Oh no, it's silent. I must fix that. There we go.
With blue skin. In the world of fiction, there are dozens of well-known characters with blue skin. X-Men's Mystique, Watchmen's Dr. Manhattan, the Na'vi from Avatar, and many more. But real people don't come in blue, or do they? Well, according to first-hand accounts, the Fugate family of eastern Kentucky, particularly those who lived in the early to mid-20th century, had naturally blue skin. So, today we're going to take a look at some facts and stories.
Yeah, it was something genetic. For a second I was like, oop, airplane going overhead, that's always fun. I thought it was like, when I first heard about them, I think my initial theory was that like there was like a circulation disorder or something, and that they naturally, something was wrong with how they circulated blood, so they looked a little bit less pinkish red and were a little more blue. But that if you're at the point where you're straight up blue, then you're probably pretty far gone at that point. You're probably not living the healthiest life. So I assume this must be just some sort of genetic mutation.
Is about the blue Fugates. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. After that,
I did
we'd
that.
be much obliged if you would leave a comment and let us know what other stories about medical oddities you would like to hear about. Okay, we recommend you turn on some Miles Davis with this one because it is going to get kind of blue.
So is it going to be sad, or is that just a play on words?
The story of the Fugates started in 1820 when the family first settled in Kentucky. Martin Fugate and his wife, Elizabeth Smith, came to Troublesome Creek, an out-of-the-way region of Appalachia. According to family stories, Martin Fugate, who started life as a French orphan, was blue himself. This remains unconfirmed, but even if it wasn't true, his offspring certainly ended up with an unusual appearance. His son Zachariah was born with blue skin. And
Zachariah, oh my god, that is such a, like, Amish name. I actually, know, I talked about wrestling not that long ago. I know a guy who, goes by the name Zachariah, and he's a independent pro wrestler. And his gimmick is that he's an Amish pro wrestler. So he comes out like churning butter on stage and then beats up the bad guys.
More of their 7 children. Due to the isolated
Look up Zachariah Gibbs.
nature of the community, the Fugates' neighbors knew about the blue people, but few outsiders did. So where did that blue color come from? Well, according to later research, the Fugates had an incredibly rare genetic defect that resulted in a condition called methemoglobinemia. This meant that their blood didn't carry as much oxygen around the body as the blood of an ordinary person does. That, in turn, makes the blood much darker, which then causes the skin of Caucasians to appear blue, and the lips to look purple. In addition, arterial blood looks chocolate brown rather than red. People with methemoglobinemia also have higher levels of methemoglobin in their blood. They may have 10 to 20% versus the average person's less than 1%. All that is to say, the Fugates' very blood was different from that of their neighbors. Well, that's an easier way to say it.
That's pretty fascinating.
Methemoglobinemia. Newsflash: inbreeding is never really a good thing. In fact, Weird History viewers who saw our video about Charles II of Spain might even recall inbreeding was ultimately responsible for ending the Habsburg dynasty.
Oh, he's the guy with the chin. Yeah, I've seen him. He was the guy with the chin from the oversimplified video. I know he's... Yeah. Oh, God. That... I don't know if I've seen this painting before, but, like, even for a painting, like, that's a sharp chin. Even if I can only assume that his chin was that pointy or, like, more. And they smoothed it out a little bit in the painting, but, like, that's a pointy chin.
And plunging Europe into a war of succession. And it was inbreeding that was also responsible for the Smurf-like appearance of the Fugates of Kentucky. Yes, Martin Fugate and his bride, Elizabeth Smith, both carried the same recessive gene that causes methemoglobinemia. It wouldn't have affected future generations of Fugates if they hadn't married within the family. The Fugates, however, lived in an isolated area that had no railroads and barely any regular roads at all. This geographical situation greatly limited their options and resulted in a situation where most family members had little choice but to marry cousins who lived nearby. Some of the other family branches were the state...
Oh, so they were cousins. Okay. That's still bad. But, like, if you're doing sibling or first cousin, like, that's getting into some tough territory. Some people throughout history have been able to get away with, like, second cousin or whatever, and, like, you don't know the difference. But, like, you're pushing it a little bit with first cousin.
Stacy's, the Richies, the Smiths, and the Combs.
Don't.
So, for example, Zachariah Fugate, one of the first known blue Fugates, married his aunt. One of their sons married a close cousin. In turn, one of their children married another cousin. In the end, it made for a collection of blue individuals united by one.
Could you react to the most inbred families in history? Maybe I will. We'll see if I can remember that when I have to lay out the playlist for next week. I should probably lay that out pretty soon because today's playlist was set this morning, I think. No, I did last night. That's what it was. So if I remember, I'll take a look. I'll see how long it is, and I'll see if it looks interesting. Because inbreeding, it's fascinating, for better or for worse, and usually for worse. It's fascinating.
Of the most confusing family trees in history. As one of the family members, Alva Stacy, once quipped to a researcher, "I'm kin to myself." At the end of the 19th century, a man named John Stacy attended church one Sunday in eastern Kentucky. He spotted a young woman and apparently liked what he saw. The two courted, got married, and had 13 children. That woman was Luna Fugate, and according to lore, she was the bluest blue Fugate of them all. According to a local nurse, the bluest Fugates I ever saw was Luna and her kin. Luna was bluish all over. Her lips were as dark as a bruise. The nurse, who lived far too early to have seen Nebula in James Gunn's 2014 film Guardians of the Galaxy.
They would be pretty popular now. I'm sure there are plenty of people who would be attracted to a blue person. Like, I don't see, like, any reason why that wouldn't be an interesting trait to have around. Especially, just go to a Comic-Con. You will pick up a cute partner in no time.
Galaxy added, "She was as blue a woman as I ever saw." Interestingly enough, Stacy himself refused to say whether
these
his
pictures don't do it
wife was
justice.
blue. Methemoglobinemia can cause developmental delay and seizures, but the Fugates
Hey Michael,
seem to
thanks
get
for
lucky
joining
in
us.
this respect. Despite the intense appearance of their blue skin and purple lips, none of the family members suffered poor health or lived in pain. The condition had only a cosmetic effect, though the family did endure a good deal of psychological pain due to their outsider status. Many of the family lived to a ripe old age, with Luna Stacy bearing 13 children before passing away at 84.
Dude.
In the early 1960s,
I'm curious to, like, if there are any significant numbers. Like, it's a rare genetic defect, but they have identified it as a genetic defect. So I'd imagine there have been possibly other cases of this. So I'm curious if there are a decent amount of people around now with blue skin that we just haven't paid any attention to.
The case of the blue Fugates was brought to the attention of Dr. Madison Cawein, a hematologist at a University of Kentucky medical clinic. Intrigued by what he heard, Cawein began tromping around the hills looking for blue people, eager to learn more about the Fugates. During his search for the family, he ran into a nurse named Ruth Pendergrass, who had some first-hand experience with blue people. According to Pendergrass, she had once been working at the county health department when a blue woman came in asking for a blood test. Pendergrass, who believed the woman was having a heart attack, was terrified by what she saw. "I just knew that patient was going to die right there in the health department." The blue woman, on the other hand, wasn't scared at all. She simply told Pendergrass that her family was the Blue Combses, who lived up on Ball Creek.
Combses.
She was a sister to one of the Fugate women. Pendergrass joined Cawein in his hunt.
Well, there we go.
Before too long, they met two of the Fugates as well as some blue members of the Combs and Ritchie families. After interviewing the Fugates, Cawein concluded their blood must be missing a crucial enzyme. To trigger the blood's natural processes, the doctor decided to inject the affected family members with methylene blue, a dye. Injecting blue people with blue dye to try and normalize their appearance might seem counterintuitive.
Yeah,
but it worked. In fact, the cosmetic results were nearly instant. Talking about the experience years later, Cawein said the treated family members were thrilled to see the blue fade from their skin. For the first time in their lives, they were pink. The solution really was that easy. The effects of the dye were temporary, but Cawein supplied the Fugates with methylene blue tablets to take every day.
So there might be blue people out there and we just don't know it, because like if they were able to come up with a solution to it back then, it would be probably pretty easy to deal with these days. So, okay, that's fascinating.
Fugate's blue skin was more than just startling. It was also a clear sign the family had practiced intermarriage. As time went on and people began to discover more about the harmful effects of inbreeding, that blue skin became even more of a stigma. Given many people's tendency to be, jerks, their neighbors were not always kind to the Fugates. In response, the family, understandably, withdrew even more from their tiny community. By the time Dr. Madison Cawein contacted the family in the 1960s, it was clear they were all too used to being outcasts. They wouldn't come into the waiting room. You could tell how much it bothered them to be blue. The Fugates continued to have large families over the years, with some children still born in varying shades of blue. Coal mining and the railroads brought new people to Kentucky, and the available gene pools started to expand. In a move that turned out to be best for everyone involved, the Fugates eventually began marrying outside of their family. After some time, the recessive gene receded. The last known blue Fugate was born in 1975. Benjy Stacy looked almost purple at birth. The bizarre sight alarmed his doctors so much they immediately had him rushed to the University of Kentucky Medical Center for a blood transfusion. But his grandmother shared the story of her family's unusual lineage, and the medical staff concluded he had simply inherited the Fugate's rare condition. The blue faded from Stacy's skin over the next few weeks, though his lips and nails continued to turn purple when he got cold or angry. So you're probably wondering whether more blue Fugates could ever be born in the future. Well, the answer is a firm maybe. The decline of inbreeding certainly makes it less likely that the recessive gene causing the condition would crop up again. However, it still exists in many members of the family. That means there's a non-zero chance that future generations of the Fugates could have blue skin. That being said, the likelihood of it happening again is very small.
Okay. That's all I could think about this whole time, and okay, that's so unique. This is one reason why I like weird history, and I've commented on like the narrowness of some of their subjects that they cover. This is an obscure family. This is an obscure family history. Like family history in itself is already like in like popular history, something that's not really played up as much in like great publications or whatever. It's typically not what most people get into when they first get into history or anything like that. They don't get into it for learning about interesting families and stuff, though sometimes they do. But I love that they take the time to go into like these just weird history stories. Hey, is this
As you might imagine, the Fugate
namesake.
family isn't exactly in a rush to discuss their history of inbreeding and the bizarre genetic legacy it created for them. ABC News did publish a story on the blue Fugates in 2012, but when they tried to follow up with the surviving family members, they reported being unable to reach anyone. At least one Fugate descendant is believed to still live in the Appalachia area, and various other families with the condition are scattered throughout the region. But the gene pool that created the situation has significantly dispersed over the years. You almost never see a patient with methemoglobinemia, admits a hematologist from the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Ayalu Teferi. The Blue Men of Lurgan, not to be confused with the intermittently popular Las Vegas act, the Blue Man Group, were Irish brothers who, in 1942, were treated with ascorbic acid and sodium bicarbonate by Dr. James Deany. The procedure worked, at least temporarily, as the brothers' skin began changing to a normal shade over the course of 12 days. They would be Ireland's last case of blue people. In his autobiography, Dr. Deany also mentions a decent countrywoman living in the middle of County Tyrone, who had a family with some blue children. According to Deany, the woman noticed that when she fed the children cabbage, they became nice and pink. When she stopped, they became blue again. So they got plenty of cabbage to eat.
That's weird. I don't know why that would be.
Now, we suspect there may be a portion of our audience who thinks it would be pretty sweet to have blue skin. And why not? Some beloved pop culture icons have been blue. Cookie Monster from Sesame Street, Sully from Monsters, Inc., and Genie from Aladdin.
Yeah, you'd have to find your subset of people who would be cool with it, though. Like there are places where you would be really popular or whatever, but it is in that a subset. Going to, like, doing basic things would be a pain. You'd get looks. It's not necessarily an appealing thing overall. I wouldn't want to have blue skin. I'm not trying to, like, I know I commented earlier like they would be a little bit popular or whatever, but there are definitely probably more struggles than benefits.
Just to name a few. Well, we've got some goodish news for those viewers. Though the Fugates ended up passing down a recessive gene through generations, ensuring the continuation of blue-tinged skin and oxygen-deficient blood for generations, there is a way to acquire methemoglobinemia without the gene. When protective enzymes that exist in healthy red blood cells are exposed to oxidizing drugs, nitrates, or other chemicals, they can infiltrate the enzymes and increase methemoglobin levels. Certain foods can cause this in infants, but exposure to chemicals like benzocaine and dapsone generally triggers the condition. Of course, there are some downsides. This same exposure typically leads to physical symptoms like shortness of breath, headache, dizziness, and loss of consciousness. A small price to pay to look like Sonic the Hedgehog. Or maybe not. So what do you think? Who is your favorite blue character? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.
I can't think of a blue character that I really like. I don't know. I was never much of an X-Men person. You good, dude? You upset? You mad? No. All right, that was really cool. I love it as a family history. It's really fascinating. A very unique family, and one that's obscure enough that a lot of people probably didn't know about it. Including me, though I feel like I may have heard about this story at some point and then just forgot about it. But that was really a wonderful video. Weird history has not disappointed me yet. I really enjoy the subject matter that they choose to take on. I think it's really cool.